Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled SIIA's Marketing Report Overview, Marketing with Confidence. My name is Rihanna Collier. I'm Vice President of the Software Division at SIIA, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Renee Van Urk, who is Chief Executive Officer of Vworld. Vworld is a software industry database that provides financial benchmarks and statistics on the software industry. Now today's webinar is going to take place in two parts. First, we're going to have Renee present on some of the research they've done using data to boost marketing. We're really lucky to have Renee with us today. He has a busy schedule but carved out some time for us. Unfortunately, he'll only be able to be here for the first half of today's webinar. So he's going to go through his presentation and then answer any questions we have from the audience. If for some reason your question does not get addressed, we will take that offline and make sure we follow up with you individually. Before I turn it over to Renee, just a couple of quick housekeeping remarks. All phone lines are set on mute. However, as I mentioned, we do want to make sure we answer all of your questions, so we ask that you submit your questions via the chat box there to the left of your screen. This webinar is being recorded, and all participants will receive a copy of the recording today and the presentation, and as well as a copy of the annual SIIA Marketing Industry Report, which will be the second part of the webinar. I will take some time and go through some of the findings from that report, and I think what you'll find is it's encouraging. Marketers are gaining confidence in not just the tools and the tactics they're using, but also the ability to measure the ROI of those marketing efforts. Next, I just want to highlight quickly our annual flagship event coming up May 20th through 22nd in San Francisco. It's SIIA's Maximize event. This is a conference, if you're an ISV looking for growth opportunities, you definitely want to be there. I encourage you to take a look at the website. If you have any questions or want to get directly involved, my email address is right there on the screen. Please feel free to reach out to me directly. With that, I want to quickly turn it over to Renee. Renee, thank you for being here with us. I'll let you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Rihanna. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Just to be sure? Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I was only going to get one yes, obviously, but well, thank you, Rihanna, again for this opportunity, and thank you, SIIA, and indeed. This is a topic that's quite close to my heart and close to my business. So, you know, I really want to talk a little bit more about what big data actually means today in marketing for marketeers in the software industry. And, you know, I'll put a little bit of a picture in one or two slides initially around, oops, I thought I clicked to the next slide. Let me, so just clicking here. Oops. Let me just go to, there we go. You know, initially I'll give a little bit of an introduction and background on what we actually do, just to put a little bit in perspective, you know, from which angle we are actually looking at big data and how marketeers can or will use big data. Then I'll put some additional reference in one or two slides around McKinsey's view on big data. I think they've done some really great research in 2013 that you know, at least partly can be shared this way. I think big data is fixing actually a marketing and sales disconnect that maybe some of us don't even realize existed until people started using big data. And you know, I'll try to do that in 12 to 15 minutes, those first four parts, and subsequently leave some time for questions. And actually, I have my marketing manager on the phone as well, who will stay until the end. So we're also going to try to make sure that we capture any questions that you have and that we can get back to you. So with that, you know, if there was ever any doubt around the fact that you know, big data and marketing is hot, I made this slide yesterday, just before sending it actually to Rihanna, and the top two acquisitions you see here, you know, Oracle buying big data startup Blue Kai to add into their marketing environment, as well as the fact that the person leading IBM's cloud and acquisition, which was also made public yesterday, is actually the vice president of big data at IBM. I think it's proof enough. And there's a number of other examples. There's a really interesting list on the left here, which may be a little bit small to see, but at a later stage you can look at just to see what kind of acquisitions have happened in the big data space, many of them linked to marketing. But maybe the other one to call out in this audience is Google. I mean, I would certainly encourage everyone who is not convinced that in the end Google is changing from a search company to a big data company. I would really encourage them to understand better what they've done in this acquisition, but also start looking at some of the motives behind their Nest acquisition. I mean, they see domotica, domestic automation, and the data they can collect from that area. That's where they see Nest playing. And also in that perspective, it is really a big data play that drove Google to make this Nest acquisition. But nevertheless, as I said, let's start off by putting a little bit in perspective what we do and know around big data. So, ISV World is a big data or data as a service company. We have a database that covers around 120,000 software companies from 75 countries, and we have basically developed in-house technologies, and we're also leveraging public big data technologies to collect all that data in an automated fashion and subsequently publish that in in an online site that is accessible for anyone for a free trial, but that is sold on a subscription basis. And so, we're basically collecting close to terabytes of information and data on a monthly basis that subsequently is used by, our customers, and a large part of that is actually marketeers. Just a little bit about myself. I have around 15 to 20 years of operating experience, initially mainly focused on software, later on in mergers and acquisitions, and a bit broader in online media. But today, my main role is that I'm the CEO and founder of ISV World, and I'm also an advisor to a number of private equity and corporate finance firms in software. Just the second piece, the usage of big data in marketing is very versatile. And again, if we just look at our customer base, and you see a number of names here on the right. Frankly, some of the usages of big data, we haven't really invented them. In fact, our initial thinking was really around M&A and for strategic insight, that is how our data set or how our big data set would be used. But it turned out that business development really became the biggest segment in terms of usage by our end users. And that goes from lead generation to market segmentation, and to driving marketing campaigns. You see a couple of examples here. So really a wide variety that I'm just summarizing here of the approaches that people have done and the tests that they have done around our data to see what comes out. Competitive analysis, for example, is not on here. Is really a big scenario for many customers as well, that they're really trying to find out who is liaising with whom, and are there partnerships that I could go after? Are there companies I should go after that my competitors are partnering with? All of that really happening on the sales and marketing side. So maybe, and I know all of you are on mute, and it's a little hard to ask questions. But I'm not seeing the next slide, by the way. But on the next slide, there's a really core question, which I think is the basis of what big data can mean for marketing. And the question is, which marketing campaign will be more successful, number one or number two? Where number one is a campaign where you're just focusing on 5,000 software vendors, healthcare software vendors, as an example, based out of the US. You can wonder already if you could actually find those. Most databases will not support already this level of fragmentation. And the other alternative is actually splitting your data up in a number of different campaigns and start to develop a different campaign for if I would take the first one in the upper left under scenario 2, a campaign that would be focused on healthcare software vendors that have cloud-based products already that are very large or just large in our definition, and at the same time address a different set of vendors, which is on the bottom left, using almost the same criteria, only excluding vendors that actually have cloud-based products, because maybe you want to send a different message to vendors that have cloud-based products versus sending a message to vendors that do not have cloud-based products. Well, this is a very specific example that probably a lot of you can resonate with, but McKinsey has translated that into something more generic and has spent 2013 to do quite a bit of research around what big data actually should mean for the CMO, for the Chief Marketing Officer. And these are some of the things that they found. So, obviously the large numbers on the upper left are interesting, but frankly I'm more interested in the percentages that they found. So first of all, what they're saying is, rather than running a small number of very large campaigns, it is actually much better to run a high number of smaller and more focused campaigns. And why? In their analysis, the net result is actually a 25% increase into your ROI on your marketing dollars. I mean, that's what their research shows. In fact, it goes further, because if you would continue your very large campaigns and very few campaigns, actually there will be a lot of spam, because you're going to be sending out a lot of messages not relevant to all of your target audience. Whereas if you can start splitting up your campaigns and run more campaigns but smaller, more focused, more granular, they will resonate much better. And frankly, I think this number that they came up with is very high. They're basically claiming a 288% increase in product profits reported. Again, I think it is high, but it's the number they've found and they've come up with. But it does say something that in this era of big data, if you start learning more about your customers, start splitting up your campaigns, start being more focused, there is really a significant opportunity to do better in marketing. Now, the other thing that we found, and again to some extent learned from our customers, is that with big data and with different data sets as they exist around our ecosystem, there's actually a disconnect that you can solve between marketing and sales. And the way, initially this is actually one of our customers from India that came up with this. Because they say, in the old world it used to be like this. Marketing would define a market segmentation, but they would never really know what companies would fit into a certain market segmentation. So they would never really know how to feed the actual company names that would fit into a certain market segment into sales. Now, we know that there have been ways around this, like again doing big broad marketing email blasts to at least reach some of them, or to start doing sales cold calling. But again, coming back to the previous example as well, it's usually quite generic, and you stick with generic messages, and it's not always clear for salespeople which companies really fit into which market segment that's being defined by CMOs. So there's a way around that. Similar to what we were just showing from a different angle. If you start drilling down, if you start splitting up those 5,000 companies you would like to go after, if you start splitting them up into maybe 7 sets of 500, and maybe even leaving 1,200 out that are not necessarily of interest to you, but do 6-7 campaigns of around 500 companies, and make sure that those campaigns are actually more granular and hence are resonating better with your customers. And then in our case, people will actually get data that either they feed directly into some of their CRM systems or their marketing software, or they still look for ways to enrich that using either LinkedIn in more of a manual fashion, or ZoomInfo or NetProspect and those type of companies in more of an automated fashion. But taking a step back, we really have a fundamental belief that data are going to be absolutely core to the quality of marketing and sales activities, and also to the quality of the work that people can deliver using these marketing and sales tools that are on the market. And frankly, we're not the only ones. I mean, on the upper right here, we're seeing the name Salesforce, and obviously Salesforce already some time ago, bought the domain data.com, invested in Jigsaw, or bought Jigsaw, and did some other things in the data era. I think it's very safe to say that also very large companies in that area, like Salesforce, are focusing on enriching their sales and marketing tools with better data to do better campaigns. To wrap up the initial part before we open it up for questions, if there's time, I think there's one realization that I would like to leave everyone with, because this is still one of the biggest challenges with big data, which is why data sets that really fit your business are not always easy to find. I mean, there's so much data being generated on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. With the technologies and the tools of today, so much more is not just generated, but is really available. And the part of that that's really relevant for us, for you, for your business, is becoming smaller and smaller. So I think with that, I'd like to leave it. I leave it also to Rihanna to decide if there's any room for a few questions, or if we're going to take these offline. So, but this is where I'd like to leave the presentation and the slides part of my of my presentation. So thank you all.
Renee, thank you very much. I just have a quick question. You talked about using data for lead gen, and that's something we're gonna talk about in the report findings shortly, and how obviously lead gen is a primary focus for marketers. But what are some of the challenges they have when trying to come up, to leverage data, and what really should they be looking for in those data points to as a lead gen strategy?
Okay. I think what people, I have a nice slide on that, and I'm trying to find it as I speak. Probably don't have enough time, but I think people in general, what I think the biggest challenge is that, as I described it at one point to Microsoft, I don't know if there's someone from Microsoft on the phone, but it doesn't matter. It's like going from Excel to Bing, because people are used to think very strictly in terms of market segments, in terms of companies to target or companies not to target. But I think once we're all really in this big data era, the world is not binary anymore. Companies, to take a very concrete example, companies that do healthcare software may well have modules that integrate with accounting software as well. And should you go after them if you're targeting vendors in accounting software? Maybe, maybe not, but it's not so binary anymore. But I think that mindset, that is a big problem. And I've seen that in large companies, whether it's Microsoft or SAP or anyone else. It really takes 6 months of a mindset change to start thinking about this availability of data, but also the fact that it's not Excel, not 20 columns and 40 rows, but that it's not. It's a little bit more fuzzy. It really takes 6 months to change your mindset, to start accepting and understanding how you can leverage it, to run a successful campaign, and then they're all convinced.
Great. One more question from one of our attendees. Forrester says that being first to call on a prospect results in sales 74% of the time, versus inbound respond to prospects that results in sales 26% of the time. Do you have any opinion on that?
Well, it's kind of funny because I'm actually in London right now, and I literally left the Forrester offices 15 minutes ago. So and we had a little bit of a discussion on this, and my opinion is that I don't think there's any proof points, and we haven't been able to find them, that there's less touch points needed or things like that. I think the proof points that we hear about is that people do see this 25% that you saw earlier from McKinsey. I think that is what people see. They see that they're able to, that marketeers are able to send better messages to smaller sets of customers and that they get higher returns. That is definitely something they see. Whether the number of touch points or after which number of touch points you're actually able to close a deal, whether that is going down. I mean, I would say my gut feeling tells me it's true, but it's not like we've actually seen proof of that.
Great. Renee, thank you so much for joining us today. If there's any further questions for Renee, we will take those if we didn't get a chance to answer those, and we'll address those separately offline. Okay.
Well, thank you all for your time and listening. And again, my colleague will also be on the phone for further questions. I unfortunately have to drop off for a different meeting, but thank you again, and well, thank you for the opportunity, Rihanna.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, the second part of our presentation today, we want to share with you some of the findings of our annual marketing industry report, which is officially being released today, and everybody on this call will get a copy of the full report. So I'm going to share some of the data points. I'm also going to highlight some others that you might not see on the screen, but again, all that information will be available to you in the full report. So I want to start quickly with just a little bit of background for everyone on this report. This is our third annual marketing industry report. Each year we conduct a survey in Q4 and release the results in Q1. We have over 100 marketing executives who have contributed. And the goal and objective is really to better understand how companies are using things like email, mobile, and social in their marketing efforts. So with that, let's jump right in just to give you a little bit of the demographics on the respondents. As you can see, the majority of respondents fall under $50 million in revenue and under 500 employees. And also 85% have stated that North America is their primary market. Let's see. So as we all know, budgets are tight, and it is critical to be able to measure ROI of various marketing efforts. So first, we want to look at what metrics marketers are using to measure ROI of these various efforts. So as you can see here, sales conversion revenue is the top metric, followed by lead quality, lead quantity, and website traffic. Really no surprise there that sales and revenue are the top measuring your metrics. So now we know what metrics marketers are using. We then wanted to drill down and say, using those metrics, how effective do you find these various marketing tactics? So I realize that these charts can be a little bit difficult to read, so let me highlight the top three. Our survey respondents stated that customer testimonials, in-person events, and product demos are the most effective marketing tactics. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but it's certainly clear that traditional marketing tactics and that personal engagement remain an important part of the marketing mix. So now I want to dive right in to what I mentioned earlier and talk a little bit about the specific findings around social, mobile, and email marketing. So we'll start with social. One data point that struck me was that 92% of marketers stated they're using social media to market their products or solutions. Now, the reason that number struck me was because it was a decrease from last year's survey. So it was down from 98% in 2012. Also decreasing was the financial investment in social media, down 20.5% from the 2013 projected budgets. And then finally, more companies are planning to outsource around social media and content creation, around social media content creation and analysis. We'll talk a little bit more about why we believe this decrease in social media investment is happening. But first, let's look at some of the other social data. So effective use of social media, the most effective was brand awareness, with increasing website traffic following. I also want to point out that only 46% of marketers found social was an effective source of lead gen, which, as you'll see later and I highlighted earlier with Renee, may be some of the reason for that decrease in investment, as lead gen being a primary focus for marketers going into 2014. So as more data analysis tools are available, businesses have a better understanding of what affects marketing cost. And what we see here is 57% feel that social does not impact overall costs, and 22% says social media has increased their marketing costs, which is slightly down from the previous year. Well, and then on the second chart to the right there, while you'll see time spent on social media marketing varies by companies, the majority continue to spend under 10 hours per week on social media efforts. So let's talk a little bit. While we know that we saw that marketers are decreasing some investment in social media, there's still a lot of activity. So we're looking at the top tools and networks that we're going to see increased use of. LinkedIn, of course, is remaining on the top and followed closely by Twitter. YouTube this year made a jump up to third in the rankings. We all know that many firms are creating YouTube channels for their businesses as well as for their products. Google Plus also gained a following, with almost half of marketers expecting to increase its use going into 2014. And something that's not here on the screen, but what we found was marketers are using these platforms primarily for marketing events and trade shows and news and PR. So I think what we're seeing is the chart there to the right is the reasons for not investing more in social media is the low value or lack of effectiveness. So what we think this means is that social media as a part of marketing is being clearly defined, and social media's role is more in the brand awareness channel, less on the lead gen side. So let's move on and talk a little bit about what we found in mobile marketing. Sorry, trying to get that screen to move. So 37% of companies are using mobile in their marketing efforts. And actually this is a significant increase, up from 25% in 2012. So it's not surprising that more customers, that this increase happened, because we are seeing that more customers are using companies' mobile solutions, and also that that mobile is continuing to change the relationship with the customer. So just to further on that, 30% of the executives said that mobile has expanded their range of customer segments, which is up from 11.65% in 2012. And 30% of the respondents also said mobile has increased their one-to-one contact with their customers. And then, as I mentioned, you'll see on the right, the product usage has also increased among respondents. So email marketing magic. Let's talk a little bit about what we're seeing in email marketing. I think email marketing remains steady and high on respondents' marketing strategies. I think you'll see that marketers are becoming more confident in their ability to measure ROI, certainly due to more data analysis tools and solutions that are made available to them. Open rates and click-through rates, still the top two metrics that marketers watch, and we'll also see in a moment that those rates are also increasing. In-person connections with prospects and customers is still critical to marketing and sales success, and we talked a little bit about that earlier, and I'll show you a little bit more in a second. And then what we found is the majority of our respondents said email marketing is still more effective than any social media. So let's talk. Open rates, as I said, and click-through rates are still the top two metrics for measuring email ROI. We're also seeing that there's been an increase of a number of emails being sent per week. So this also might be a direct result in the confidence marketers are having in measuring the effectiveness of their email marketing campaigns and being able to target messages directly to individual prospects. As I mentioned, open rates and click-through rates are also improving. 48% of marketers have an open rate between 11 and 25%, which is up 8% from 2012. Over one-third, 31%, have an average click-through rate between 6 and 10%. And then over 23% of firms achieve click-through rates in the 4 to 5% range, while almost 50% were in the 2 to 3% range. Additionally, something not here, but 72% of respondents have a 1% or less unsubscribe rate for their email marketing campaigns. Again, I think that's also showing some confidence in being able to target messages and to a particular audience. So a look ahead. What have we found that marketers are going to focus on in 2014? Where are they going to spend more marketing budget? And where do they really see their marketing strategies going? So it's not surprising, again, that lead gen is the top focus going into 2014. We talked about that earlier. Lead gen, and eventually, they can measure when those convert to sales, and ultimately, revenue is the ultimate goal. The top lead generator was stated as events and trade shows, and then similarly, events and trade shows ranked as providing the highest quality leads. So my next slide should not be surprising when we say that where will companies increase their marketing spend in 2014? The number one response was conferences and trade shows, with page search being coming a close second, and of course SEO, and then followed by social media. So 5 key takeaways, I think, from this year's marketing report. And again, all the findings will be made available, and there's much more data in there than I've highlighted, but certainly we want to just pick out a few of what we see carrying into 2014. So the first one would be around social media. And I believe that social media is truly finding its role, as I mentioned, and that is around brand awareness. I think until marketers can really find a clear correlation between social media and ultimately revenue, we may continue to see a bit of a decrease on investment in social media. It's certainly not going to go away. It's a way to get their voice out. But I think as far as actually putting investment dollars and time into it, it's for brand awareness and not lead gen, where we know that marketers that is their number one focus. Number 2, again, confidence. I think we found in last year's report, it was marketers were finding it very difficult to measure the ROI of their marketing efforts. This year, 64% of marketers feel that they can confidently measure the effectiveness of their marketing efforts. And again, that's no doubt due to the marketing tools or data analytic tools that are out there that they have, that they can then target their specific audiences and make their marketing campaigns more effective. Number 3, mobile. The future for mobile is there as a marketing channel. It increases customer engagement. We see that it increases product uses. I think there is a future role for marketing. We believe that it will continue to increase as companies figure out how to reach their customers effectively through mobile. Some exciting things to come in the mobile marketing realm. 4, the return to traditional lead gen sources. We saw over and over again in the data that conferences and trade shows, customer engagement, customer testimonials, product demos are the top lead gen sources. And so that personal one-to-one networking is still #1 ROI for marketers. And so I think we will continue to see some more investment in them. Certainly there's a lot of trade show and event activity out there, and that's something we may look at next year into how marketers identify the trade shows that can provide the most value and the greatest lead gen opportunity for them. That's certainly some data that we'd like to expand on for the 2015 report. And then finally, #5, the need to correlate revenue with be able to correlate the revenue to be able to commit the marketing effort, the marketing dollars. And again, due to data analytics, we're being able to, the marketers have more confidence that they can do this, that they can track what leads are converting to sales, and therefore what the revenue value is in that. So with that, I want to open it up to questions. As Renee said, we do have his colleague on the line. I do have a couple of questions here. One is just on demographics, which is what portion of respondents were B2B versus B2C. The majority is B2B in this particular survey, and I would say probably about 85% were B2B. I have another question. Trade shows and conferences and webinars are listed as the most effective lead gen approach. Webinars are quite a bit different than in-person conferences. Do you have a breakdown between the webinars and conference trade shows? We don't have a breakdown in this particular data, but you are correct. I mean, they are certainly different. But I think if anything, it's about getting in front of the customers, having direct contact with the customers. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to answer or ask them via the chat box now. That is the completion of the presentation for today. As I mentioned, the report will be sent to all of you in the follow-up along with a recording to the webinar and the presentation, so you will have Renee's slide deck as well. And if there's any questions, you have my contact details there on the screen as well as Renee's, and we will be happy to follow up with you separately and individually as you see fit.